Okay, we can go ahead and get started, though we may have a few people still filing in. That'll be fine. Again, my name is Chris Chapman, and I'm privileged to be joined today by Ed Gonzalez at BrightStar Partners. Ed will be walking us through the presentation today. But first, we're going to start off with a few slides. Just give a brief introduction to who we are here at BrightStar Partners and BSP Software. There are 4 departments to our organization. First, where we have is the roots of our company, which is in the professional services. We are a Cognos exclusive consulting firm. We have a number of seasoned and tenured Cognos professionals that work in a variety of industries and with clients of all sizes and types. We've done projects ranging from BI and TM1 implementations, upgrades, training, as well as more specific project-level consulting work. As a result of our extensive consulting experience and recognizing very similar pain points and problems amongst a number of our clients, we are inspired to create BSP Software. This leads us into our second pillar. And we call it implementation-based software because our solutions are truly born out of what we're seeing in the field. BSP software solutions are designed to automate, streamline, and enhance the functionality of Cognos BI out of the box for administrators, developers, and power users. The third part of our organization speaks to our partnership with IBM. We're a premier-level IBM business partner and reseller of Cognos licenses as well as Cognos subscription support renewals. Our premier-level partner status is a testimony to our relationship with IBM and the large amount of transactions we execute on a monthly basis. Through our experience, both working with our customers and with IBM, we're able to bring tremendous value through explaining licensing, functionality, ensuring accuracy within quotes, and most importantly, getting the deepest discounting on new Cognos licensing, Cognos 10 upgrades, and also within annual support renewals. Lastly is our fourth pillar, and this is the website cognoids.com. This is the largest online web community of Cognos users outside of IBM. BrightStar Partners owns and hosts this free forum. We currently have over 13,000 registered contributors and close to 1 million page views a month. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at Cognoids, I strongly encourage you do so. It's a great place to interact with Cognos users and also help you get help with any issues or problems you may be having within your own environment. So with that, that concludes our overview of BSP Software and BrightStar Partners. At this point, I'm going to be turning things over to Ed to go through the presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free on the right-hand side of the panel to post the questions in the question section, and I will relay those to Ed when we're done with the presentation during the Q&A session. Ed, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Thank you, Chris. As Chris mentioned, my name is Ed Gonzalez, and I am a consultant here at BrightStar Partners. Today I want to talk a little bit about creating custom portals using the Cognos RSS Feed. Now, if you're not familiar with RSS, I will give you a brief overview of what that is a little later on in the presentation. But for now, I've been a consultant now for several years, and I get a lot of common requests concerning the front end, how to distribute reports and how to display reports. And those common requests usually come in the form of, how to distribute a subset report, how to distribute reports to a certain number of users, how to bypass the Cognos connection, meaning how can I run a report directly without having to navigate through the Cognos folders, how do I modify the look and feel of Cognos, either to give my set of reports a distinct look, or to integrate it with the look and feel of my current intranet site. Now, if we look at this list, I can think of several ways to satisfy any one of these requests. But one way that I found to satisfy all of these requests, depending on the amount of customization we need, is to simply create a custom HTML page to act as a portal. And then we embed links to our reports directly into that page. Now, running reports through URLs is something that's been around in Cognos for a while, and it's pretty well documented in Cognos documentation. Now, if we look at this and we decide that this is a path that we would want to go down, then the next question really is, how do we get those URLs? And we have a couple of options for that. The first option is to maintain those URLs manually. We can actually go directly to report properties and copy the URL directly from there, and then we can paste them manually right into our HTML page. Now, if you have a small set of reports and you're not really too concerned with reusing this portal, this method works pretty well. I've actually used it in the past with some pretty good results. However, if you have a lot of reports and you want to reuse this portal for different groups or for different sets of reports, then I would recommend going with option 2. And that is to use the RSS feed directly from Cognos. Using the RSS feed, we can retrieve a list of reports and then programmatically parse that list out and insert the links directly into our HTML page. Now, before going any further, let me talk a little bit about what RSS is. RSS stands for Real Simple Syndication, and it's a web standard that's been around now for at least 10 years, I think. And it's used mostly for publishing information such as links to news stories or to blog entries. And it comes in the form of an XML file. The fact that it comes in an XML file is what gives us, as developers, the opportunity to parse it and use the contents for our portal. Now, Cognos has the ability to create an RSS file from any Cognos connection folder. It's actually quite simple, and I'll talk a little bit about that right now. So now, I just so happen to have a Cognos connection open, and what we can see here is a standard folder within Cognos Connection. This one just happens to be from the samples that we get when we install Cognos. And this one is the Go Data Warehouse Query, and the folder, of course, is the Report Studio samples. Now, when we look at this, we see a list of reports. Now, every report in here we want to use in our custom portal. But first we need to get the links in the list here. Now, as I mentioned, option 1 is to just go in here and copy this URL. You can copy this URL and run this report directly right from the address bar, or by pasting it into an HTML page as a hyperlink. But what we want to do is we want to simplify this a little bit, and we want to create a reusable solution. So what we do to get an RSS feed is we go up to the address bar, and at the end of our address line, we simply append ampersand feed equals RSS. And then once we hit enter here, we can see what we get is a plain list of reports that are in that folder. And it contains some basic information. It has the title of the report, last time the report was published, and a brief description. Now, the description, of course, is optional when you create or publish a report to Cognos Connection. Now, the link is in here as well. It's actually right here underneath the title. Let me go back to my presentation here. And I want to review real quick. So again, from our Cognos Connection folder, simply append ampersand feed equals RSS to the end of our address line. When we hit enter, we get a list of reports. Now, if we were to take a look at the source for this page, what we would see is that it's actually an XML file. And you can see that we have XML at the top, and we have RSS. Yes?
Hey, sorry to interrupt. We're getting some people saying that they're having a difficult time hearing. I don't know if you could get closer to the mic, possibly, so try to make that a little more clear.
Okay, hang on 1 second.
Okay, sure.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, I think I'll check with them. I think so. I can hear you better.
Okay. So as I was saying, if we look at, once we get an RSS feed, this is what it looks like in our browser. But what we're going to consume is the source for that file. And if we were to take a look at that source, we can see that we get an XML document. And within this XML document, we have a couple of entries that are important to us. The main one is items. Each report is within an item tag. And within that item tag are two pieces of information we need for a portal. And that is the title and the link. So programmatically, we're going to parse this document and retrieve those two pieces of information for our custom portal. Now, to use that RSS feed, we're going to have to consume it and we're going to have to parse it. And there are many tools out there, pre-built RSS readers that will do this for you, and a number of programming languages that we can use to parse it out, including Java, .NET, and JavaScript. For simplicity, and because we're dealing with small files, I'm going to go ahead and use JavaScript. Specifically, JavaScript in combination with jQuery. Now, if you haven't heard of jQuery before, jQuery is a JavaScript library. And all it does is it simplifies JavaScript programming. What it does is it takes existing JavaScript functions and creates some shortened syntax and some simplified syntax for using those functions. Now I'm going to go ahead and give a demo, and I'm going to review the basic HTML structure for this portal. Then I'm going to review the JavaScript code I used to retrieve that RSS file and parse it out, and then give a live demonstration of what the portal looks like once it's completed. Now, if you're not too familiar with HTML or JavaScript, don't worry. We're going to have plenty of time at the end of this for questions and answers. And the code and the HTML are both pretty simple. So let's go ahead and take a look at that code here. So I just opened up an editor. You can use any editor you want. I happen to be using one called Aptana. So if we look at our basic HTML structure in the editor, we can see that we have our HTML tags, our standard tags, and then we have two elements within this HTML page. One is an unordered list, and in this case I'm giving it an ID of nav list. The ID is so that I can access this item programmatically through JavaScript, and the unordered list is going to contain these elements called LI, list items. And this is where we're going to place our links to our reports. The second item on the HTML page is an iframe. An iframe gives a place where we can actually run the report. So this will act as our report viewer. Again, we give it an ID so that we can access it programmatically through our JavaScript. And once we access it through the ID, we're going to change the SRC attribute. So this is where we're going to, at the end of this, append our link to our report. It'll happen behind the scenes programmatically, but once we append our link here, our report will show up in this iframe. So that's basic structure. So no matter what we do as far as styling, adding additional elements to the page, these are the two items that make up the menu and the report viewer. So if we move on a little bit and take a look at the code. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm using the JavaScript library jQuery. So the first thing we're going to want to do is add a reference to that JavaScript library. I've already downloaded it and placed it onto my web server. So this is the path to that. You can place it anywhere you like on your web server, or you can even access it online. I believe you can access it through Google APIs. Once we have that library referenced, we can go ahead and start to do some programming. And all of our programming is contained here in these script tags. And we can see that I have about 30 lines of code, and probably about 20, 25 once you get rid of all the spaces. So there's not a lot of code here at all. So the first thing I do is I created a function called load RSS. Now, I created this function so that I can interact with this manually. Since I'm giving a presentation, a demonstration, I want to be able to fire this on command. In a production environment, you're probably going to place this function within a onload event. I think it's called document.onload. So within that function, I am now calling a jQuery function. You can tell it's jQuery because it begins with $. And the jQuery function I'm calling is AJAX. This is the function I'm going to use to call Cognos connection and retrieve my RSS file. Now the AJAX function takes 4 specific parameters. The first one is type. This is the type of call that we're making, and it just happens to be a GET. The second parameter is URL. Again, for demonstration purposes, I'm using a text box, so I'm going to be passing in my URL here. In a production environment, you're going to want to hard code your URL so that it loads automatically when anyone runs this HTML page. The next parameter is the data type. And as I mentioned earlier, RSS comes in the form of XML. So that my data type is XML. Finally, the last parameter is success. This is what we want to do if we successfully bring back that XML file. If for some reason the XML fails, we are unable to retrieve it, nothing will fire past this point. So within this point, I have another function. And within this function, I am now going to parse my XML file. And what I basically want to do is find the item tags. And for each item tag, I'm going to loop through them. And as I loop through them, I'm going to grab 2 specific pieces of information. One is the title, and I'm going to assign that title to a variable named title. And I want to grab the link. I find the link within the XML file, and I assign it to a variable named link. Once I have those 2 pieces of information, I'm going to create an HTML string. And this is the string that's going to be placed within our unordered list tags to create our menu for us. So I create a variable called HTML, and you can name that variable anything you want. And within it, I start to create a string. I use the li for list element. Within that list element, I'm creating an anchor tag, which is basically a link, the blue underlined links that you normally see on most web pages. And then finally, what I want to do when we click on that link. And what I want to do is I want to find the iframe. Remember, I gave it an ID of rep frame. And I want to change the source attribute to match the link variable that I created up here. And then between my anchor tag, I want to place the title. So this is what will actually be displayed on the page for users to click on. And once I have that created, I simply append it to my unordered list, which again had the ID of nav list. So let's take a quick look at how this looks in practice here. So I'm going to run this here. Now, as I said earlier, because I'm giving a presentation, I'm using a text box to paste in my links. Again, under normal circumstances in a production environment, you'll probably want to have that link hard-coded so that when this page opens, it goes directly to the portal. So we grab my feed again. Okay, once again, I get the URL to my folder. Go to the end, I want the ampersand, feed, is RSS. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Bring that back to my test portal here. I'm going to go ahead and paste that right in there. click go, you can see right away that we now have a list of the reports that are in that folder. If I go back and take a look here, you can see that that list now matches what's in there. And just to show that this is live and there's no tricks up my sleeves here, I'm going to go ahead and pick another folder real quick. Export objects. Again, this is from the samples that get installed when we first load up Cognos Connection. Again, from this folder, I do ampersand feed equals RSS. Copy that. And paste it right in my text box here. Let me refresh this. Okay. And now we can see that we have the 3 reports that match in here. Now this one didn't show up because that one is a broken link, but we can see that we have those there. Now the second part of this, now that we have this, was to actually get this report to display within the iframe. So now if we click on any of these, we can see that the report now shows up on the same page, right within the iframe. And it is a fully functional report. And if there were prompts or anything on here, we'd be able to answer the prompts and run the report. So if we look at this, there's not much to look at. It's pretty simple, but very functional. Now, the next step would be to create some sort of style around this. And that is easily done using cascading style sheets or adding additional HTML. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into that, but I will show you how some samples we have of some additional styles. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another one. So this has some additional styles applied to it to change the look and feel. Just created a bar across the top, changed the look of the links, and moved my report window over to the right-hand side. But still, all the underlying components are still there. Once I added the RSS feed, I retrieved my list of reports, and by clicking on any of the links, I get it to display in my report window. Okay. Now, just want to give you a quick look at a couple of different looks here. Again, same basic layout. We have our report window, and here I just happen to have the menu hidden across the top. That's just to give us a little bit more room. Once again, I add link there, and I can see that my reports pop up automatically here. Once again, click on any of them, get this to show. And simply by adding a little bit of JavaScript, I'm able to hide that menu to give us a little bit more room so we can see the entire report. And then finally, I wanted to show one where we have a lot of stuff out there. Now, on this particular one, I went all out and added links for additional functionality. I'm not sure what they would be, but we had that there, back button, sign out button, and so forth. But we can see that we are able to, because we are in HTML now, we can style the look and feel any way we want. But even as styled as this happens to be, we're still made up of 2 major components. That is the report window, which is our iframe, and our menus, which happens to be the unordered list. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick another. I'm going to go back to Go Warehouse Query, Report Studio Samples. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this one more time. And we can see once I place the link to our RSS feed, I hit go, which kicks off the function that we created. We populate our list again, and then once again, you can click on any one of these, and our report runs in our report window. And again, the reports are fully functional. We're able to page up, page down on our reports. And if the reports happen to have any prompts, we will be able to fulfill those prompts before running the report. So once again, just to review, I walked through the HTML structure. Again, it was very basic. I included the two elements that are required, which happens to be the unordered list and the iframe. So starting from that point, you can create any look and feel you like. I reviewed the JavaScript code. As you saw, there was only about 20, 25 lines of code, actual code used. So very simple, very quick and easy to create. And then finally, I gave you a presentation, a demonstration of what the portal looks like once it's actually finished. So the benefits of this particular technique is that it's easy to implement. As you saw there, the HTML page is very simple. The code also pretty simple. However, it is very easy to change that look and feel. So by adding additional HTML, some style sheets, we can change the look and feel of our portal, either to give it a distinct look or to match your internal intranet site. Now, depending on how much customization you'd like to do, it is a good alternative to skinning the entire Cognos connection. So if this is only interested in a specific set of reports or only for a specific set of users, this may be a pretty good way to go. And as you saw, there was no modifications to the Cognos environment whatsoever. We didn't change any of the system XML files or the system configuration files. All we did was simply call for the RSS feed, and we were able to parse it and create our portal. Any security that you already have in place will remain in effect, meaning if a user does not have access to a certain set of reports, they will not see that set of reports. And then finally, with a little bit of extra programming, with some additional HTML, maybe some additional JavaScript, we can extend the functionality even further. We can create shared prompts so that if a certain report uses prompts, we can save off those prompts and apply them to another report in another tab. We can create persistence. So if we have a report with multiple pages and we go 3 pages into the report and we click onto a different report, we can maintain where we were, and when we click back to that report, it's still in the same place that we were before. We can create a custom logon page. So if you do not have single sign-on, you can create a logon page to match the style of our portal. And then finally, we can change formats. And we can do a few other things, but using URLs, running reports to the URLs, one of the parameters we can pass is what format of the report we want, be it HTML, PDF, or Excel. And we can pass that information through the portal and retrieve our report in that format. So that brings us to the end of the presentation, and now we can open it up now to some questions.
Great, thanks. That was a great demo and presentation. It's definitely sparked a lot of conversation. We've got a lot of questions coming over the chat, as well as some people waiting with their hands up. I'm going to get to one in the chat. So one of the questions that came through, will this keep the session live, i.e. stop a session timeout?
The portal, we are no longer within Cognos. So whatever we have open will stay open until we close that browser. However, if you do not have single sign-on, you will time out. And if you try to click on a report after whatever your timeout happens to be, you will be prompted for a logon again.
Okay, great. Another is, how come you aren't using Cognos 10.2? Is this only available for Cognos 8.4?
No, it is available in Cognos 10.2 as well. As I mentioned earlier, RSS is a standard web technique, or standard, I should say, and it is available all the way from 8 all the way through Cognos 10.2.
Okay, great. If there's a new report, how do you update your web page?
Once you're pointed to the RSS feed, one of the reasons that RSS feed is so popular out on the web is that once you point to an RSS feed, every time you go back to that RSS feed, any new reports, or if you're out on the web, any new news story or blog entry will show up automatically.
Okay. Another, is it safe to assume that if we have Cognos behind the corporate firewall, that the users will need to be logged in for them to connect to the links properly?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have a couple people with their hands raised. Ron Seifert, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can ask Ed your question. Go ahead, Ron. Ron, are you there? Okay. Looks like Rita also has a question. Rita, you can go ahead and ask your question. Oh, well, let's go back to the chat then. I think that'll work a little better. What would happen if the default report output is in Excel 2007 format?
We can, if it's in Excel 2007 format, if that's the way you want it to come out, it will open up in a separate window the way it does right now within Cognos Connection. So in Cognos Connection, if you click on a report that comes out in Excel format, you normally get a second window that is Excel. And that's the same thing that would happen here. Now, behind the scenes, we can overwrite that, as I mentioned. When we run a report through a URL, one of the parameters we can pass is what format we want it, whether or not we want it in PDF or HTML or Excel. Both PDF and HTML will open in that iframe. However, the Excel format will open up in a separate window.
Okay, great. Are these reports that you're going over, are these bursted or live reports?
These are live reports. As I mentioned earlier, when we run a report through a URL, we can pass some parameters. So if we're looking at a bursted report, one of the parameters we can pass is to run the latest version. So if a report is already bursted, the report's created, and we'll get that report out. However, if we want to run a fresh version, we can pass a parameter to actually rerun the report.
Okay. Another question, will this work on mobile devices like an iPad, or are there any problems with that?
I have tested it on iPad. I have had some success working on the iPad. However, you are going against the actual report itself using this technique. So a report written for the desktop may not perform as well on the iPad itself. So as long as you're aware of those constraints and do some testing, you may be able to get it to work.
Okay. If you were delivering links to a subset of reports, would you limit the RSS feed coming out of Cognos, or put logic in the parse to pluck out the ones you want?
Depends on what you want to do here. If you want to limit so if you go to a folder that has, say, 10 reports in it, and you want to pass a link out and only have 5 reports available to someone, right now within Cognos, using the Cognos security, you can hide and show reports depending on user class and their roles. That would apply as well to this RSS feed. So if a report is hidden within Cognos Connection for a specific user, if he runs the RSS feed, he will not see that link. Now, that being said, if you do not want to use the built-in Cognos security to handle that, you can write some logic. Within the loop, where we loop through the XML page, we could put an if-then statement. And if the report equals this, don't show it.
Okay. Can you envision a way to regularly ping this RSS feed to maintain the session?
You mean so that we run this RSS feed, we get a list of reports back and maintain the session open?
Yeah, I think that's what they're going for.
Right. Well, once you hit the RSS feed and you bring back the links will always remain live. So as long as you don't, particularly if you have single sign-on, those links will always remain live. So if you click on any of those links, you will always run the report. However, the report content itself, so if you run a report that has multiple pages on it or has filters on there, and you let your report stay for a certain amount of time, say 20, 30 minutes, you'll still get the same timeout that you get when you're within the Cognos connection.
Okay. So dealing with active reports, will these open in frame or will they open in a new window?
I have not tested active reports yet, so I'm unable to answer that question right now.
Okay. Would you be able to restrict Cognos so users wouldn't be able to create their own portals using this technique?
No. Anyone who knows how to use RSS would be able to create this portal. Would be able, in fact, using RSS readers that are already currently available. Even Microsoft Outlook has the ability to consume an RSS feed. You can point it to a Cognos folder and use it at ampersand RSS feed, ampersand feed equals RSS, and get a list of reports. So as long as they have access to Cognos, they'll be able to get an RSS feed.
Okay. And what web browsers are supported with this particular technique?
All of them. Well, the three main ones, particularly Safari, Chrome, and IE. Now, when you write the code for this, you may want to test it because sometimes you get a little different look and feel in each particular browser. But because we're using JavaScript and jQuery, it is supported in all three browsers.
Okay. And does the code need to be on the same server as Cognos?
It does need to be on the same domain, not necessarily the same server. So if you have multiple Cognos web servers, it could be on any one of them. However, it does need to be within the same domain. So if you're using www.google.com /myreports or /Cognos8, the code for this does still need to be within google.com domain.
Okay. Is there a way to get the same collaboration capabilities to this portal like we have in Cognos Connections and Cognos Viewer?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Okay. Okay. We'll move on. Getting some duplicates. I think we've hit all of the major questions that were brought up, different areas. So, if there are any more questions, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank everyone again for attending today's webinar. If you have any final thoughts or questions for us, please post them to the GoToMeeting toolbar, and we'll follow up with you all individually to any of those that didn't get answered or need additional feedback. Should you have any other questions, please reach out, whether it's new licensing purchases, upcoming renewals, or any kind of services needs. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be happy to assist you in any way we can. Again, thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again over the next few months for each edition of our Wednesday webinar series. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Ed. Great presentation.
No problem. Thank you.